The first reference data type to be discussed is going to be an array. And what do you need to know about an array? An array is a built-in object, meaning it has its own properties and methods, which you'll see in a moment. Whenever you create a new array, it has already some built-in properties and methods that we are free to use. Number 2, it has an ordered set of values. So the order is important. Every element in our array has its position indicated by an index, and this index is something that you refer to quite a lot. So the position of an element in an array is important, and unlike an object where it isn't important, here it is. Third thing about an array that everyone needs to know is that each stored value in the array has an index, which has been mentioned, and that the value starts from 0. This is like super crucial, important. In programming languages, we start counting from 0. And this is just like a new mindset. And from now on, you will understand all of those memes about developers because we count from 0. That's it. That's a new year. Okay. How do we create an array? So basically, we can use an array literal. So if I do something like this, just an empty square bracket, this is already me creating an array. To prove you that I'm correct, I'm going to paste it in the console, and you can see that we have the result of an empty array. We are giving the length of 0. We can see as a prototype array. So this is already an array. It's just a little bit pointless because, not because it's an empty array, but because we didn't assign it to a variable. So we can never refer to it again. So it's been created, and as soon as it's been created, its job is done because we can never refer to like an unnamed array. It has to belong somewhere. Like for instance, in here, we have created an array of names, and we assigned the value of that array to a variable called name list. Cool. Again, you can see these square brackets. An array notation uses square brackets. This is what we need to remember for definite. And we have those various names in our array called name list. So we're storing them somewhere, and now that it is being stored in a variable, we can actually use some methods on it and access its properties. There you go. Literal of an empty array and the completion with an index reference. Cool. So we can create an empty array, as you've seen here, const city list. So we've created a variable and we assigned as its value, we assigned an empty array, and this is okay. So this city list here now, if I comment this out, city list is just an empty array. There you go. It's fine. We can refer to it, we can use it, we can place things inside our array. And how do we do it? By using a array notation. And inside our square brackets, this is an array notation, we are referring to an index. If we say 0, this is going to be position 0. And this is going to be the new element at position 0 in our city list. So I'm going to do, again, city list, and we can see that it has Paris in first position, which is index 0. Save it. Now our city list should have 2 elements. Go Paris and London. And that's how you can do it. Square brackets and then an index starting from 0. Cool. That's not the only way to create an array. A literal is the easiest one. You can see here, like got variable called items and then an empty array using the square brackets, which is an array literal. Definitely the easiest way to create an array, but not the only one. Our game items uses a keyword new and an array constructor, which we'll be discussing in more detail when we get to an object-oriented programming, what are constructors and so on. For now, just know there is this object, built-in object of an array, and when we put parentheses at the end and using the keyword new, this is also the way to create a new empty array. So for instance, if I console log the value of items, you can see it's an empty array, but if I do game items, you can see the exact same thing. So I don't actually know anyone, or maybe I've never seen anyone using this notation, the new array and parentheses, but maybe because of that, I believe that this way is easier, faster, and better. But because I want you to be a good developer and not just a mediocre one, right here, right now, even at the beginning when building foundations, I want you to understand what you're saying. I want you to be able to choose wisely and explain why you decided to create it this way and not the other way. And for instance, if you happen to see something like this, here it's like a function. So basically you're using a constructor, which is spelled with capital A, the keyword new, and in the parentheses here we just created an empty array because we didn't pass any values inside. But we can. And for instance here, we are placing red and blue inside here. And this is going to be an array. Let's check in the console. This is an array of colors, and you can see that there are two positions, length 2, and we have many methods and properties available to use. This is like an array created straight away with 2 elements. So just bear in mind that we can create new arrays this way, or injecting, placing inside our array our square brackets, an empty array this way, another empty array another way. And if we wanted to use this same way from here, we could straight away fill out our array with values like this. And then if I do colors, use the square brackets and place a new value, assign a new value to this position. This is me saying that colors and my array colors at index 2, so this is 0, this is 1, and this is going to be the last element in the colors array. I want to place green. And if I do colors again, you can see that we have now red, blue, and green as well. So this is just the basic thing, how to create an array. And in each of these ways, of course, this is something that we've talked about already. So in each of this case, an array instance is created with the same properties and methods, as we can see from the constructor. So if I do console log and use our type of operator, and this is going back to our name list here, I'm going to save it, and we can see that this is an object. If I console log name list, you can see this is an array. An array is a type of object. And I'm going to uncomment the colors as well, and the colors bear in mind we're created this other way with the constructor and a new keyword. And I'm gonna save it. You can see this is also an object. Save it. You can see object with those values inside. So it doesn't really matter how you create it. You can create it this way or this other way. Here a new array and place new values as parameters here, or in place parameters, and this is exactly the same thing. It's going to point to an object because arrays are objects, and this is something to be remembered as well, like definite, full definite. I'm just gonna comment this out so it doesn't bother us. Leave it. And now, what keyword should we use when creating our array? We can edit an array even if it's assigned to a const variable. So we can use a const keyword to create our array, and we can still edit what's inside our array. So most often we choose const for the array. However, we cannot assign anything else to this variable, which is good. We could modify when we create this array const here. We can insert elements inside. We can modify whatever is inside. It's just this keyword const here prevents us from creating the same variable again. So once created my array const here, it cannot be assigned with anything new. So it's a good thing because we need to control our code. Why in one place would you like to create my arrow const with const, knowing that you don't want to give it a new value, that you want it to be an array, just so later on somebody else comes in and changes it, or even you change it by accident. If you want to be able to modify the elements and also be able to assign a new value later on, you should use let and do it responsibly. So at the beginning, when you create a variable and you know what it's going to store, because you know, most often you do know, then you should responsibly decide whether you want to use a const or a let, knowing what are the consequences. Cool. And so we are going to work with those modifications here. First of all, if I take my array const, you should already now be able to tell what I'm trying to do in here. So I'm referring to my array const. So my array const is from line 37. This is the variable that is storing an empty array currently. And what I want to do, I want to inject at the position 0, index 0, so it's going to be the first element. Here, I want to insert a string that says first const. And actually this I'm doing here already. So here I just want to not assign it. I'm assigning it here using an assignment operator. And here in the console, I just want to display the result. We can see that my array const 0 is storing the value of first const. And if I do the same thing, this is obvious because I should have started with my array let 0. Let always allows you for modifications of all sorts and reassigning with some new value. Cool. So this obviously lets you make some modifications and introduce new elements, but this const as well. So it doesn't matter that you're storing your array under const, because you can modify it. You just cannot assign it with a new value. Imagine it's more of like garage, where in your garage you can store pretty much anything, whether be it a bike, be it a car, motorcycle, or set of tools. So you can store anything that you like. You just cannot take the garage out and say, okay, this is now something else. Like, it's a garage and not something else. It's not a garden, for instance, right? This is a garage. You can store anything that you want there, but you cannot replace it. Cool. Unless you erase it entirely, so then fine. You can like take a part of entire house and then build a garden there, but I'm hoping that you are understanding my metaphor here, and let's move on. So here, I'm gonna start this time. I'm gonna start with the let. My array let that allows for modifications and reassigning new values. Say that now, and let's see what is it, not const, but let. My array let is something else now. Cool. So my array let is no longer an array. It is now a string. Can we do the same thing with my array const? Can we? We cannot. We can't. It means that we tried to do something really, really bad here. We cannot assign to constant variable. Constant variable is constant, not, it doesn't vary. It should stay constant. So I'm gonna again comment this thing here, the entire thing. I'm thinking that we're not gonna use it later on, and move on to the next thing. What an array may contain. It can contain anything, like our garage. You can store anything, your own old clothes in boxes and toys and some old furniture. It's up to you really what you're gonna store in your garage. And the same for an array. Array can take anything. It can contain a string, a number, an object, a null, or another array. In fact, it can store another array, which could store another array, and so on. It can take anything in, any value. In reference to array elements, so as we mentioned, we use index to indicate what element we have in mind. We use the index, and index is counted from 0. That's right, from 0. 0 is your new one. And when we want to indicate the specific element, we will use square brackets. Square brackets are for an array. So here is something. We worked on that name list at the very beginning here, which contains Danny, Bobby, Jess, and Bradley. And now, what I want to do here is conselect name list at position 1. So not the first element, but the second one. And I'm going to comment this out for now and save it. And we can see Bobby. And let's print out our name list so we can see if it's in fact Bobby. We count from 0, so it is 0, 1, and don't pay attention to this empty here because it's something that I'm going to show you in a moment. I didn't want you to see it just yet. Okay, so I've got Bobby, name list again. And we have Danny, Bobby, Jess, Bradley. And we can see that our name list has 4 elements starting from 0. So every array will be displayed this way in the console. And position 1 is Bobby. If we wanted, for instance, store our position 2, so 0, 1, 2. If we wanted to now take Jess, maybe not out of here because nothing is going to change our name list, but now we want to be able to store Jess in a separate variable. We can do it this way. We just create a variable, let's say a popular name or a new name or my boyfriend's name, I don't know, and then assign it with the same way. The same way you want to be able to access the name or the element in an array. the same way you do it here. So you use the name of your array or the variable, and in the square bracket, again, you indicate the position. And again, starting from 0. I'm gonna say it 100 times. If you're gonna take one thing out of this class, it's gonna be that you are now starting counting from 0. Cool. So now under popular name, we should have Jess. And if we go to our name list again, it didn't change. So it's exactly the same thing. Danny, Bobby, Jess, Bradley. We didn't take anything out. We didn't modify our array. We just are storing now Jess also in the other variable. This is a simple data type though. Just a string. And cool. Well, if we do, can you guess what it does here? We say name list 4 equals Frank, and we only have, okay, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. I'm just gonna remove that Bobby because we don't need Bobby anymore. I'm gonna console log, comment this out, save it, and we go back to our name list 4 equals Frank. So can you tell what the name list is gonna be like now? So basically we just added Frank at the very end. But what if we do, instead of Frank now here, or instead of position 2, Frank as well? Is this gonna add another thing to our array or replace it? I said at the beginning that the index of every element in the array is very important. And now you should see why. I'm gonna do a name list again, and let's look. Okay, so we have now Danny, Bobby, Frank, Bradley, and I've inserted at position 2 Frank, so we have 0, 1, 2. Now position 2 is taken by Frank. If we had a look at the original name list array, it was Jess at this position here, between Bobby and Bradley, and this didn't change. So basically the old value has been removed altogether and replaced with a new value. So this is what happens. The index is so important that it's not gonna just spread, like inserting Frank in position 2 wouldn't move Jess, like do something like this, that we want now Frank to be here. So we would add Frank in the position 2, but the rest would move. This is not gonna happen. The number of elements or the index has to be correct. So if Bradley had index 0, 1, 2, 3, if Bradley had index of 3, it's not going to change, and Bradley remains at position 3, and all other elements in an array will remain. So I hope that I've stressed this enough. Cool. Let's comment this out. We want our name list to look what it is. Cool. This is a comparison here. So if we do name list position 2, whoops, copy this, paste it in the console, and check whether it equals Ted, we are going to see false, because we can't do an exact comparison, the strict comparison, changing the value and the type, doing name list and indicating that it's index 2, because it's just going to be replaced name list position 2, is going to be replaced just. So it's as if we said is just with capital letter equal to Ted. So this is exactly the same thing. Right. It's about the value that is being stored there under this link. Creating new items and modifying the existing in the array. Using the index, we assign a value. If the index exists, we replace it. So this is the repetition of what we've already done, replacing Frank just for Frank. And this way let's see again. Name list has, right, this is because I'm leaving those things out here and they're modifying our array, and we didn't want to modify this anymore. Let's comment this out for now. Position 5 or has been deleted. Okay, back to normal. We have our name list, Danny, Bobby, Jess, Bradley, and now this is position 0, 1, 2, 3. And if I wanted to create something at position 5, and bear in mind that this we start counting from 0. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and we don't have position 4. If I want to place something at position 5, save it. And now we are going to have a look at our name list again. We will see that we have now 6 positions in our array, and the one that didn't exist has been filled out with an empty thing. Empty, which is a substitute for undefined, because the value of position 5 now is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, position 4 is undefined now, and we place this new name at position 5. So this is how important indexes are for an array. If you say that you want to add something at position 5, even though the position 4 isn't filled yet, it's going to place it exact at position 5 and kind of fill out the gap with an empty. Oh, and gonna comment this out. Remove items from the array. Okay, so delete replaces the value with the current value undefined. It doesn't change the size of the array. What's supposed to be. So if I'm gonna do delete namelist2 here, it's gonna return true, right? So this is the returned value, and a name list now looks like something like this. We have Danny, we have Bobby, we do not have Jess anymore, and we have Bradley there. And we said delete, we used that keyword delete operator, and it removed its value, but it never removed it in its index. The index doesn't disappear. We have methods that will delete the entire thing, like not only the value but also an index, but this is going to be presented in part 2, right, when we will learn all the most important methods. Currently you can see that delete is not removing the entire thing. The indexes are exactly as they were before. We are just saying an empty value there. And it's empty, but this only stands for undefined. If I do a type of, we know at the operator type of, and we provide the value for the nameless position 2, going to remove my commentary, and we can see it is in fact undefined. It is undefined. Empty is undefined. And this is kind of important if you ever create some sort of later on functions in your programs. You'll know that you have to there'll be situations when you will expect the value to be undefined. That's why we are doing this. As I said, there are methods that can remove an element, also the index, and kind of changing the other indexes in an array and changing the length of an array in general. Right? We'll learn in the part 2 about those methods when we get a little bit more serious. And now array length. So this might sound silly, but this is like super crucial. Like property of length in an array is used so commonly everywhere. You want to loop over, you want to like access the last element, many times you want to know the length of an array to make your program universal, because the values inside an array can be changing dynamically. Whatever has been introduced there in the cities, it might depend on the users. And so this city's length, for instance here, because here we are showing the cities array, it might be like very, very important. And it doesn't seem that way because it's just the length one property, but it is very important. If I do cities length, I'm going to clear the console now, and we will see it is the length of 6. Alright, so the length is not an index. Like, index is started from 0, and this is your new mindset as a programmer, like counting from 0 from now on, everything. That length is counted as for normal people. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements. We have those 6 elements in our cities array, and counting from 0 position, index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So countdown starts from 0, ends at 5 here, but the length is 6. Like for normal regular people, here we don't change anything. And here we have users that has a length of what? It has a length of 0 because we have an empty array. Cool, so this is again something to remember and just not even spend a second thinking about it. You have to know. Index is not a length. Length counted for as normal, and index starting from 0, which will be also important in creating those for loops and etc. later on. So I hope you understand it now, so that later on we don't have to think about it and spend our resources understanding why this function works this way and not other way, because trust me, this is going to be important in the later part. Cool, use the length of the array. You can build a very long array very quickly. Our long array here is an empty object, and I'm gonna show you long array is here an empty object, and already on line 86 we did long array dot length, and by the assignment operator we don't want to read its property, but we want to give it a new value, and we assign 100. So now long array has 100 elements, empty times 100. So it's this 100, but you can see that the length is 100. It's just empty positions, 100 of undefined. And also here, if we do something like cities and we want to access a specific index, we did 0, we did 1, we did 2, we did 5, but we can use those properties and whatever they return as an indication of our index as well. It doesn't have to be a hard number, 89, position 0. It can be, for instance, here, we are taking the city's length, right? City's length, and city's length is currently 6. So this stands for 6. And if we do -1, it is us accessing the last index in an array. So again, I'm going to print out cities, and we can see that it has 6 elements. So there we go, 6. And -1 is because the index is always 1 smaller. So we have counting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the last position is number 5. That's why we can access the last element of the cities, saying city's length -1, and this is always going to point to this last element in our array. And this is a very useful shortcut, because as I said, the program has to be universal. If you ever want to say that you want to access the last element of an array, this is how you can do it quickly and without thinking, what is the last index? How many elements does your array contain? Right, add another item as the last one. So if this is the last one that exists, this is how we can read the property. And if we wanted to actually add a new position as the last one and not mess up the order or the indexes, like we didn't want to replace something by accident, we would just do inside the square bracket city's length. And city's length here stands for 6, because we have 6 elements, and so it would be placed here after the 5th element on position 6, and the new length then would be 7. If we uncomment this, we save it, and we have now cities. We can see cities have now 7 positions on the position 6, and the index 6 we have Tokyo. We can go on and do Rio, and then Malta, and print out. We have now 9. Every time we add it as the last one after the previous last one. So this was the last one, and this is the new last one, and then the Malta as the new last one. By saying city's length rather than saying hard-coded number, we always know this is going to be the last element, but the new last one, the new that we need to put there, we're placing it there. City's length -1 is us accessing the actual last element, whatever is in an array. And I promise not much left. We are on line 96, enlarge, reduce, reset the array. So here we wanted to make a very long array, and we did long array, we access its length property, and we said 100. So we can do exactly the same thing with users. Can do users. Our users now will have 20 empty properties, so elements, and all of them undefined. We could do city's length, and do you remember what this meant? I already made a country underneath, so this is us saying city's length, whatever the value was of city's length. Now I want the same thing plus 2, and this is the shortcut. Plus equal operator is the same thing that is put underneath here, and city's length plus So this is currently 11, and if I do plus equal to, we're gonna have 13. And what is our cities array like now? Is everything that you've seen so far, and we added 4 empty spots, and is now 13. Okay, I know what happened. We had 11 because I did cities length. I've uncommented this twice, and before the program has updated, I already had here 11, and then I got confused why we had 9, and then suddenly it added 4 empty spaces, but it's because I've uncommented those 2 here. So now mystery, so we have 11, and if we do cities and see what's inside, we'll see 4 empty spots because this is now happening twice. I just only wanted to do a mini demonstration of or reminder or revision, so that this is gonna be the next time you see it, it's just gonna be, oh yeah, I know it, I understand. I don't know why she's repeating again what it means. But I'm sorry if I do repeat something that you already know, but then it's even better because it means that you are on this level where you don't need any repetition, and this is the level you want to be at. So if I'm gonna comment this out and just stick to the original syllabus, what we wanted to achieve here was to see that cities have 11 elements with 2 empty added at the end, because we are adding them here without specifying what they are. Cool. And if we say that city's length is now 3, we do cities length and it's 3. And if we wanted to see what cities are those, it's Krakow, Chicago, and Berlin. So it just cut off the entire thing. And this is not something that you would do very often in your program, but what you will look for, like the solution of how to do it quickly, is when you want to empty an array, and this is very useful to do. So our users were actually an empty array, so let's play something and with capital letter and Martin. We go 3 users. Now I'm gonna save it first so that we don't make the same mistake again. Show me what the users are. Okay, of course, because I am probably already uncommenting this, so making it 0. And the users show you that it is Ola, Anna, Martin, plus those other 17 empty ones that we've said that users length is 20. So these are the ones that I've placed there, and then it fill out the rest with 17 of empty ones. And now if we do users length 0, it's gonna reset our array to 0, and it's an empty array again. So this maybe not so popular to set it to 3 suddenly, but this is very popular to clear our array, make it 0. Oof, it's becoming a long one. I think that I'm repeating way too often, too many things of the same kind. Type of users, object. So we can check. You don't need to take my word for it. Type of users is object, because array is an object. But if we want to check if our thing that we've created is an actual array, that is another operator that is called instance of, because array is an object, but more closely it is an instantiated array. So cities were meant to be an array. If I do cities instead of instance of array, it will return true, and rightly so. If I however do cities cities and instance of string. Even though it is an array of strings, it should not be an instance of a string. Let's do cities instance of object. And it's also true because array is under an object, right? And cities instance of function, false. So cities will be an instance of an array, but it will also be an instance of object because arrays are objects. Something to remember. And if you want to check if your newly created array is in fact array, or you want to check some like a very long code and you can't get to the mid of it and find out something and you want to do it quickly, you can do an array. This is the built-in object array. Access is already built-in properties and methods. One of those methods is the isArray method, which is in parentheses as an argument receives your array and will tell you whether this is in fact an array. We receive true. And we're almost at the end here. Object dereference, and it's not only from an array but actually for any object. So we know that if we create a simple data type and it is stored under this variable, if you let's maybe start with what we've got here. I've created another array called letters and it's just randomly A and D, and then I've created a new variable called characters and I gave the value of letters. And this is not like with simple types just copying the value of A and D under the characters here. This is actually pointing to the same array. So they are not storing directly those values inside. They are more of pointing at the correct address in the computer or in the program, indicating the same array. So the letters and characters are still the same thing. They're just IDs which help us identify what we're looking for, but the same, they are indicating the same thing. Unlike in simple data types, where you're copying the value and then you can modify the value in one variable and then modify the same kind of value in another variable, but these will be two separate entities and they will like work independently. All right, and all other objects will be removed if not referenced. So this will exist as long as there is any link pointing at that particular array. If we created an array like this, it existed for a second and it stopped existing because there's no way you can actually now make any reference to it. You cannot modify it. It's stopped existing. It doesn't exist anymore. Our letters are characters pointing at the same thing. So our array is very much alive. We can modify it. We can add more elements. We can remove elements. If we wanted to kill our array, we could do it this way, letters, and give it a value of null. We could do it this way, characters, and give it a value of null. And now we killed both letters and characters, so there's no link, nothing pointing at our array. So it doesn't exist anymore. You can check letters, null, characters, null. Our array is non-existent at the moment. If we wanted to do it very quickly, we could do something like this. Letters equals characters equals null. And it's not a very common notation. I haven't seen it in the program really, but if you ever do see, you will know that this is taking both letters and characters and saying it's null. And last thing, for the part 1 at least, is the things that came into use with ECMAScript 6. And this is called the structuring. And this works this way, that if we wanted to say const and inside here name user, ID user, and age user, this would mean that name user is Stanley, ID user is 215, and age user is 54. This is like the structuring assignment. So let's remove this and let's have a look. Name user is storing now the value of Stanley. You use double the square bracket notation, so it's right here and it's also right here. And doing it this way, it will take each value in turn and assign them with a new value. So name user is Stanley, ID user is 210 taken from here, and age user is 54. So all of those in shortcut has been created as variables, storing those values. And here we create our, let's say we create our variable game and then put 3 values inside our game array. And if we wanted in the next step very quickly assign those values to our new variables, we could do the structuring this way. Create those 3 similar way as in here. We create those 3 variables, place them in an array notation, the square bracket, and then assign it with the value of game, which also has 3 values here in the array. So if we take time, we'll see it's storing the number of 120.12. If I do point, it is storing a value of 87. If I take nickname, somebody's got nickname, good uncle. So this is it. I'm sorry that I've talked so much and repeated so often, so many times the same thing over and over again. I do apologize for that. And in the next part, we are going to get a little bit more serious. I'm going to show you the most important methods for arrays. Cool, so we've managed to cover part 1 and now time for part 2. This part is devoted to methods we can perform on the array object. And I've selected a few very basic but also very important. So you need to make space in your memory, in your brain, and memorize them. I kind of have to ask you a mini favor here, or although it might feel like it's a major favor because there's a lot to take in already, but those few methods will make your life much easier if you are going to memorize them. And following the tutorial will not do the trick. So after going through this tutorial, I would strongly encourage you to sit down and make not only those mental notes, but also the actual notes in writing. And also maybe create some arrays of your own with some meaningful names, meaningful people, or the food you love, and practice those methods, because even though they seem super simple, because they are not difficult, but it's much better if you practice, make those associations in your brain, so that later on when you have to come up with a solution for the project, or when you're at work, these, like the part of syntax has been already dealt with, and you don't have to think about it. Which one was it? Was it push or pop or unshift? It's much better to take this time now than rush things and skip to the next part because you want to do it the quicker way. I warn you right now not to make the same mistakes that I've done in the past. When I first started learning programming, I underestimated the enemy. Maybe JS isn't the enemy, but it's definitely not the easiest. So I thought if something is very easy, I get it, and if I need it, I will find it, and then I will worry. I'll worry then. And I think that was not the right choice, because people always said to me, Ola, if you really want to learn it, you have to practice. And I thought, right, you practice. I don't want to practice. I don't have time for this. I feel like I already know the topic, and it seemed simple enough to kind of like ignore it. And it would be much better to take this half an hour and just write a few lines of code and try to assign it to a variable here and see what the returned value is from this one and how this one is going to act, rather than do this not very thorough work. So now is the time to focus on those and give it this time, so that the process of learning and memorizing is thorough and good in general, just very good. Cool. So that said, let's focus on those few methods. Few very simple methods. I kind of like trying to fool you that it's easy and so you can skip to the next topic. Don't skip to the next topic. I've created an array called Italian users, storing some Italian names. If we're going to console log, here we have 6 elements at position starting from 0, length property, and the prototype says array because this is the parent that we are inheriting all those available methods and properties from, which we can use. It's just that we need to know how to use them and when to use them. That's the trick, to know when and how. Cool. One of them is pop, push. This is something that we'll be discussing today. Just gonna comment this out for now. And the first method to be discussed is push. Push will add an element to the end of our array. If we wanted to add something to our Italian users, we have to, first of all, stipulate that it's Italian users that we want to add something to, then the dot, and then method that we want to use. So we want to use push, and in the parentheses, because I'm adding another string, in quotation marks, I've got Alessandra. If I'm going to console log this, you can see that now our array has a length of 7 and Alessandra has been added to the end. Right? Easy. And also, if I'm going to do Italian users, then push, and then let's use this Vito name here. You can see that it's returning 8, and it's because the new length of our array is now 8. So this method push is not only adding a new element to our array, but it's also returning an information about how many elements we have in the array as well. So it's not something that you have to use, but you may if you wanted to and if you needed to. So there we go. I'm going to comment this out. I'm even going to comment out Alessandra and go on to unshift. Push is adding an element to the end, whereas unshift will add a new element to the beginning of our array. So very similar situation here. We've got Italian users, unshift, and Tommaso. I'm going to console log, save it. I have now 7 elements without Alessandra, and Tommaso is at index 0. So you can see that the index has been moved. We are interfering with the positioning of our element. And these are kind of like abstract concepts here, but if you ever needed to add another element to your shopping bag online, you could use, if you ever wanted to create an online shop, you could use this push to push another element to your shopping bag, or remove it, because we have also methods to remove elements. So it's not only adding with push and unshift, and I'm going to repeat, push and unshift are to add elements, but we also have methods to remove elements. The first one, pop, because this one is going to remove something from the end. So it's going to remove the last element here. Here it is in use, and you can see that we don't have to specify what element we want to remove. It's just going to automatically remove the last element. So you can see that the last element is now marker. And okay, Tommaso is gone. So let me just save it. Let's see what the Italian users look like now. We have 6 elements. And now if I'm going to do Italian users pop, and also I'm going to uncomment this right away so we can see what has been removed. Marco has been removed. Marco had to go. And previously you've seen that push has also stored, like, would return the new length of an array. So we can store a different thing here. So here Marco has been removed, and we could store that value in the new variable. Cool. So I'm going to save it. And now the removed user can see that it's storing the value of marker, because the pop is not only removing the element, but is also like storing the value of what has been removed, which is actually very useful in practice. Because if you wanted to remove someone from one list, but only because you wanted to add this person to, I don't know, another list, like reserved names or something, I don't know, some guests that you wanted to invite, but maybe to some other party, I don't know. Your invention, you have to be creative in this, but you can store this value in the new variable. And by comparison, I just want to show you the other thing, because we had in the previous material operator of delete, and delete would remove a value, but the index would stay. So it would do something like, and leaving you with this empty word, and the value would be evaluated to undefined. This pop is removing the entire thing, leaving no space, is just shortening our array. It has a new length and no empty spaces, no undefined. Whereas if you do a delete, it doesn't interfere with the index. So the positions of everything stays as it was. It's just the name that would be taken out. So let's save it. Let's do console log now underneath here and see what happens. So you can see that it has removed the last value, but it didn't interfere with the index, with the position. And also, I hope you remember what this meant. This was the Italian users array length, meaning, I don't know, let's say 5 minus 1, which would be indicating, pointing at the last element. So this would work exactly the same way, but not exactly, because pop is removing everything altogether, whereas delete is only removing the value and not touching the space, leaving this empty here. Gonna comment this out, save it, and see our Italian users are back to the original 6 elements as at the beginning. So pop, removing the element from the end. And also you can store this value in a new variable. There is also a method to delete something at the beginning. So it's the first item on the list. If we do Italian users shift, and now try to access the Italian users, we have the first element, Michelle, and Giovanni is now gone. It had to go. If we do a const, another removed person, save it, and another removed person is now storing Giovanni. So you can see that you can easily store this information of who has been removed. This is again Italian users shift, so this would remove the next name on the list, which would be Michelle. I'm just gonna uncomment this, assign it to a new variable called person2, save it, and another removed person2 is storing Michelle. So this is going from the front, it's taking one by one, position 0, position 1, and so on. And also storing this somewhere. Let's save it. I'm not going to console log the Italian users because we've seen it. Or actually, yeah, no. And as the comparison, again, the Italian delete keyword is removing only the value, leaving the empty space. So let's save it. Let's see Italian users now, and you can see that this position 0 here, which was Giovanni. Yes, Giovanni is now empty, but the index has been left untouched. And this, I already told you what did these methods return. Some return information about the length of the property, and the other ones that are to remove elements are storing those elements that have been removed. This is something that we have already seen in practice. Removed last element, Italian uses pop, so I'm not going to do it again. And removed first element, this has also been, I've shown you, and this is the new thing. So I have a const length array after push. So if I push veto, the method returns the length of the array that the array has after its execution. So this is returning the length, and unshift also returns the length after it has been added. So I'm just gonna comment this out. I'm gonna do a length after push is 7. I'm gonna uncomment this, save it, and length after unshift, which is now 8. So Italian users are looking like this now. So Apollonia has been unshifted to the front as the first element. Veto has been pushed at the end, kind of doing it the opposite direction. I should go with push first and then unshift. But you can see what I mean. The concept is so simple. It's got kind of like 4 keywords that we need to understand and memorize, which is push, unshift, pop, and shift. And so it's just 4 of them. The push is adding at the end, and shift is adding to the beginning of an array. Both are returning the value which is the length of an array, the new length. After those elements have been added, pop and shift are deleting. Pop at the end, shift is deleting at the beginning of an array, the first index, index 0 in fact, and they will store the elements that have been removed. I'm gonna comment this out altogether so we have a clear console and move on to the next method, which is concat. Concatenation, which is already been introduced when talking about strings, and this is very similar. So it combines arrays and it creates a new one on the basis of those other arrays. Something that we've come up with is red colors, so it's red, setting sun and blood, and green colors, green, grassy, because grass is green, and green banana. And now if I wanted to put red and green colors together, we could do this. I'm gonna comment this out and comment this, and you can see that we've got red colors dot concat, and in the parentheses the other array that I want to add, and I'm assigning this new value to red and green colors. And if I'm going to print this out in the console, you can see that the new array has 6 elements: red, setting sun, blood, green, grassy, and green banana. So this is a totally new array, whereas red colors too much. I copied too much. I only wanted to print out the red colors. We have 3, and green colors also 3. So the original arrays have not been interfered with. They remained as they were. And now, if we wanted to do something like this, like going a little bit off the book, so here we're like this, you will see something like this if you go online and read in the documentation. It's like fine, get it, but you can do also something like this. It's not that you are limited to only concatenating 2 arrays. You can do red colors concat to green colors, and then after a comma you can specify that you want to add another element, like in here. And this one will have now 7 elements, and the last one is marine. And even if you went without the array and only wanted to add an actual word, this would also work. You can see that the marine has been added just as a string and not as an array, and it has been added regardless. So there's many things that you can do extra, not only those like the most basic ones. And another way to concatenate arrays is to use the spread operator. The spread operator is the 3 dot operator, which is here. Got red colors array, we have green colors array, and now I'm creating colors collections, and I'm signifying that I want to place everything in an array. So I want the new thing to be an array, and I'm placing red colors, comma, green colors inside, so both of my arrays here, so the variables. And those 3 dots, they basically do something like this. They spread the elements. So it's like putting this here is the same as if I said I want to split all of those 3 elements into like separate elements and place them inside an array. And the same goes for the green colors. So I'm taking every element from here individually and placing it in the new array. The new array is signified by those square brackets, the array notation. So this is the same as just the language for the computer, for the JavaScript engine, and those 3 dots This is called spread operator. So it's spreading the elements. And if we're placing them in here, because there are also other uses for the spread operator, but here we are placing inside the array and saying that we want to now spread them and assign the new value to these colors collections. Which you can see worked exactly the same way. Again, here you don't have to just place two arrays. You can go off the book and like add anything that you feel like. You want to add maroon, add maroon. You want to add a number of 66, add it. And if you print out, you can see now we've got 8 elements. All the 66 doesn't make much sense here, but it's just for the presentation purposes that we have everything that we wanted to have here. Maroon, 66, and so on, and so on, and so on. You're free to go nuts. And another array called items with some random words. And this is something for the part 3. So I'm thinking this is enough for the basic, because slice and splice and the other methods that I'm going to introduce now are not so crucial. These are important, and these methods are like to make more of mental note and understand them, and the process of learning them may take a little longer. I just wanted to make sure that those are like, I'm stressing that these are important and they will come up quite a lot, and it's just for your own sake to memorize them by heart so well that you don't have to ever think twice what pop was doing or what shift was doing or what was the return value, if you ever want to store that value. I will see you at those cruel methods, slicing and splicing and kind of breaking our arrays and creating new ones. Cool. And on to part 3. Today in this class we are going to talk about some more methods for the array object. And maybe before I said like you have to practice and practice and practice some more, but I didn't mean that you shouldn't practice any other part of the course, because it's always good to do your own coding afterwards to let the knowledge kind of like cement. Right. Those methods are a little bit more complex, a little bit more advanced, so I think they might take a little bit longer for you to get really comfortable to use them in your project. But nevertheless, worth to know they exist, and if you ever need them, and you'll know that it's just a matter of looking for them and just making this, like checking the specifics, what comes as what parameter, which I will explain in just a second. And at this point, I want you to realize one thing, that methods are subdivided into 2 categories. So basically they can be either destructive or non-destructive. This means that we always perform methods on, like those methods that we are going to talk about now, we perform on the array, and they will either change the original array, like permanently modify it, or not. And I've created this array of some random strings called items here. There we go. And the first method to be discussed is going to be a slice method. And rather than explain how it works, I'm just going to show you right away. I'm just going to zoom in and make this slightly bigger. Cool. So go slice, and maybe save this first before going on, because this has been, I've updated this slightly and it's still printing out the old collection. Save it and clear this. Okay, so why is this still showing the old one? Maybe refresh. Now that is what we were looking for. So you can see that it has sliced. Slice means like to cut the original array, some part of it. And if you put 3 as the first parameter, I'm just going to print out the original items array so that you can see that it still has 7 elements and it looks exactly as it was. So no permanent changes have been made to the items array. Everything is as it was. And the slice method, we worked on items. The first parameter we passed was 3, and it meant that we want to start cutting at index 3. So 0, 0, 1, 2, and 3 is hump. And if you don't provide the second parameter, it means that you want to just slice the rest of the array until the end of this array that you're working on. The original array remains exactly the same. So the slice method is an example of a non-destructive method that will not alter the original one. It's just returning a new value, and pay attention that it's also an array. So it's going to return a value of new element as an array. And depending on what we're going to put as parameters, we are going to see different elements here being returned. So if, however, we provide the second parameter, it is as if we were saying start cutting at index 2 and stop at index 3, but it's not, attention, this is not including the index 3. So it will stop right before index 3. That's not what I wanted to print out. Got slice 2 and stop at 3. You can see that we started at 0, 1, 2. We started at 2, which is rump, and then we stopped right before index 3, which is hump. So if we did, I don't know, instead of 3, let's say 4, you can see that it's already included both rump and hump and stopped by index 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, and is stopped at index 4, but it's not including that index. So this is our instruction as to what we want to slice of the original array that we are working on. If we need to get some elements from the inside or like from the beginning of the array, we can specify where we want to start copying or cutting and where we want to stop. If we don't provide the second argument, this is just gonna go until the end of this array and take all remaining elements. Cool. So if we wanted to like get the copy of the entire array, we could start at 0 and then just say items length, because items length is it's gonna be, let's say this is 7 elements, but starting from 0, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is gonna be number 6, and this is if we said items length, this is gonna be substituted with number 7, but not inclusive of that index, which is basically the entire array until the last element, because items length is not the same as the index, because index starts at 0. And we could do it this way, but why bother with the second argument or the second parameter if only putting down 0 as the first parameter will do exactly the same thing. It will just start at index, new item has, right, because it's declared twice. I'm gonna just comment this out and no more error here. And if we provide only one parameter, which is the first one, and it says 0, this is us saying that we want to start slicing at index 0. And if we do not provide the second parameter at all, this is like as if we let the slicing happen for the entire array until the end. And very, 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 very important thing is that since it doesn't make any permanent change to our original array, if we wanted to actually do something with those new values, with the new array, we need to make sure that it has been assigned as a value to the new variable. We need to create a new variable and assign this new array to the new variable, because otherwise it's just like us doing nothing. Like whatever we do, any slice is returning a new array, but it doesn't exist anymore. It existed just for this one fraction of a second, and we can only work on those elements if we make sure that they have been assigned as a value to the new variable, right? And also we can also provide a value as a minus value as a parameter. And what it does, it basically works from the end. So it will, -1 means the last element, which I'm going to show. I'm just going to show you as well. I'll go back to show you that the new items is the exact copy of the items array, where we started slicing at index 0. It took the entire thing one by one, and it says new items is exactly the same thing as an items array. And now we can work on this new array. If we didn't want to change the original array, and we wanted to make sure that we have the original array stored, and then also to be able to work on those same values later on, but without interfering with the original one, then we could do this, and we can freely work on this new array without destructing the first one. Cool. And now moving on to item slice -1. So I'm going to clear the console and paste this. So you can see that it's the last element taken from items. If we do -3, it would be last three elements: some, meeting, and driving. So we can work backwards from the last elements if we needed the end of the array copied somewhere. Cool. This, remember, is what I've already said, that if we ever want to reuse the elements, we need to make sure they have been assigned to the new array. And I'm just gonna uncomment this, comment this out. So what do you think will be stored in the new items now? It's just a little test if you followed how slice works. So we're working on the items array. We are using the slice method. We pass the first parameter 0, which means that we want to start cutting at index 0 from dump. And we said as a second parameter, we passed 3, meaning that we wanted to stop at index 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, but without this index. So the new items now should be a collection of those 3 strings. So let's check new items, and we have dump, bump, and rump, which is the exact first 3 elements in the items array. Cool. You can do like a mini test for yourself later on for the new array and play with slice and assign it to new variables, and that will definitely help to kind of like reiterate and reinforce it in your head, reinforce the memorization process. And slice, as it's a non-destructive method, it has its like an evil sister. So its evil sister is called splice, and a splice, on the other hand, is a destructive method. It will destruct the original method, the original array. It will change it. It will modify it permanently. So we have to be really careful with using splice on the array. because once we splice it, it's not going to be the same anymore. And so for the splice, I've created a new array of animals. Let's just check if our animals are in order. Got dog, cat, canary, and a mouse, so that's exactly what we wanted. And it looks really similar. That's kind of like, at the beginning, it might be a little bit confusing, because if you get slice right and you memorize what's the first parameter for and what's the second parameter for, and since they're called so very similar, it's easy to get confused and confuse those two methods as well. But in fact, this is slightly different. So again, the first parameter is the index, as well as where we want to start splicing. But the second parameter here, this 2 in here, it doesn't mean the index, but it actually stands for how many elements we want to remove. So if we wanted to start at index 1, that would mean that we want to start with the cat, and since we want to remove 2 elements, that would mean cat and canary. And again, this is returning what we've cut out of the original array, and the value is also returned as the array of strings. You can see it has positions, it's got length property, and a prototype of array. So this is an array as a value, and the original animals array has been shrunk, and it has now 2 elements, which is dog and mouse, because the middle elements have been taken out. The splice will make this permanent change to our original array. So that's why we need to be careful when we do splicing. And I've commented all of them out so that they won't be modifying the array as we go, because I always want to work on those 4 elements from the original one. So the second thing is that if you do not provide second parameter, it's basically you let's save this first, and animals original has 4 elements again, and now animals splice to without the second parameter is basically us saying that we want to start cutting at index 2, so 0, 1, 2, we start at canary, and if we don't say how many elements, it's just gonna cut out all of those elements until the end of array. So if you don't say how many, it will take all of them, starting at the point where you decide. So index 2 until the end. Go. Again, save it. And if we do splice 0, this is like a very easy, very efficient, very fast way to just reset our array. If we still want to have an array of animals, but we decided that we don't want any of those animals and we just want to have an empty array, the splice 0 is the fastest way to do it. It's just, you can see that it's returning all four elements. So it's been, all of them have been cut out from the original array, meaning that nothing is left in the animals array now, which is now an empty array. So total reset of the entire array. And splice is interesting because it's not only for like cutting out, because this is like, it sounds so destructive. It's like, even sounds so aggressive, splice, and it's so brutal, but it's not all that, because it can actually be used to replace those elements that we just deleted. And if we use a third parameter, I'm going to save it. I'm going to print out the original animals, and now animals splice, and this is as starting from index 3. This is how many elements. You want to remove one element, but if you say on the third position, hamster, this is like as if you said, in this place of a mouse here, place now hamster, put hamster. So you can see that the mouse has been taken out, and now animals look like this. Instead of a mouse, we have a hamster, which is more like a pet-like animal. Cool. So we've replaced it, and we can do more. We could do, for instance, supply start from index 0 and remove 2 elements, so we will take dog and cat out, and instead we will have fish and snake. You can do animals again, and you can see that the fish and snake have replaced dog and cat, and the rest of the array, canary and hamster, remained. I'm gonna save it and go back to our original form of animals. And now, if you want to add something but you don't want to remove anything, that's not a problem either, because you can just say that you want to remove 0 elements, and this will basically insert a rat at position 2 but without removing anything at all. So you can see that it's returning an empty array because we didn't remove anything. The splice didn't cut out anything, and the animals now have an extra element at index 2. Rat has been inserted. So this method can also be used to grow your array, not only to remove things. And like this. There you go. Again, at index 0, remove 0 elements but insert horse, pig and donkey. And animals now have 8 elements, horse, pig and donkey. Pig and donkey on the first position at index 0, and then the rat, dog, cat, rat, canary and a mouse. So that is splice. And with splice, this is exactly the same thing, apart from like the fact that it will change the original array. You have to remember that if you want to use those values that have been returned, so if you cut out something from one list and you want to store it in another list, then you will have to create a new variable and store those new elements that you have removed from one. Store them in the new variable as a new array. Otherwise, those elements that you cut out will be gone. Right. And just to check, if we followed what I've been saying about the slice and splice, this should be no problem to just know what the pets will be like. Animals currently storing just mouse. That's not okay. That was supposed to be a test and I already told you what the result is like. Let's reset this. Let's comment this out. Let's save it. Animals. Now back to our original 4 elements, dog, cat, canary and a mouse at the end. And now we work on the animals and we want to do splice. If we splice, so we start from 0, and the second parameter is how many elements you want to cut out. So you are cutting out from index 0 dog, cat, canary, right? So we've got 3 elements cut out, and since we are assigning those elements that we are taking out from animals to our new array, it's called pets. So those 3 elements should be stored in pets now. And we are going to uncomment this and see what animals are stored in pets. So we've got exactly dog, cat and canary, the first 3 elements that we cut out from the animals. Right. Cool. And that is it for our evil and less evil sisters, slice and splice. And we go on to another destructive method, which is called sort. So you might be able to kind of remember it from when we talked about a string. This sort will sort out our array in the alphabetical order. So just gonna copy this and paste it here, and you can see that now end is in the position 0, mark in the middle, and 0 at the end, all in the alphabetical order. We can do the same thing with our animals array, and again, canary before cat, that would be correct, dog and mouse. So we can organize our array with the sort method if we wanted to do it in the alphabetical order for the array, obviously, if we work with strings and letters and characters. Another method that you might remember from string is the index of. And here, we instead of looking for a specific character, we are looking for a specific value. So for instance, if we check the animals have, again, 4 elements. They have been organized. And if we do animals index of canary, you can see that canary is at position 0, and this is the index that has been returned. If our array has 2 values of the same kind, so like exact same, I have number 22 twice, here and here. I'm gonna save it, and here I'm gonna check. Index of 22 is 1, and this is because our method will look through the array, but as soon as it finds its first match, it's not gonna look any further to check if there are duplicates or another value of the same kind of whatever we're looking for. It's just gonna return the first index that it finds straight away. If we wanted to look from the other end backwards, we can use last index of. So if we wanted to find this last index of 22, we could do it with the last index of, and this is now returning position 3. Cool. If we were looking for row in our array, you can see that there is no row. So this is going to return -1, indicating that it didn't find it at any index. Because index starts at 0 and -1 is like, look mate, I didn't find it. If you search for Rob instead of row, it should find it at position 0. And very similar one to the index of is the includes method, which is also should maybe be known to you by like our class in a string. The difference is it's not going to tell you where is the position, it will tell you whether it is included in the array or it isn't. So if animals include rat, it will return false because there is no rat. If we ask if animals include canary, you can see that the value is passed as a string because we were looking for the string. It will return true because it contained canary as one of its value. If you're looking for 22 but as a string and you have an array of numbers, it should return false because it's gonna check not only the value but also the type. So this would return false. And it's very good because you're not looking for a number you're looking for a number as a string. So you're basically looking for a string and not a number. So this is false. If you're looking for a number of 122 in the array that has even two numbers of 122, it will most certainly return true. And clear this, have more space. See, true. So a quick way to check if there's a value that you're looking for, if this value is present in this array, the include method will give you the way to quickly check. Join method. Again, something you might be already familiar with, but join here takes all elements from the items. I'm just gonna print out what the items was. See, it was this like an array of random strings, and if we do items join and execute that, it will return a very long string separated by commas. So we didn't provide any like parameter here, any argument, so by default it was looking for a comma, and that's what it produced, a very long string. And when there was a division by a comma, it introduced a division of a comma here as well. And basically that's how they've been divided into separate strings. If, however, you wanted to separate them not by a comma, but introduce some other sign like a hyphen or underscore, or like here I've decided I wanted to use triple hyphen instead of a comma, which is by default introduced to separate those elements when you use a join method on the array. You could do this, and that would also work. And you just have to pass this value here as a string, and it's just gonna be the divider of those elements that it finds in the array. So all the separate elements here by default with a comma, and you can customize it with any character or anything that you like. You just have to pass here as a parameter. Another destructive method is the reverse method, and the reverse method works like kind of similar to the sort method. It's not going to sort it, it's just going to turn it around. So if the end was at the end, it will be now the first element. And let's just print it in the console. Right, so I've got the end was at the end is now the first element at position 0, and A is the last element, position 3, when before it was before as the first element. If I wanted to sort this array now, it wouldn't go back to its original form because number 3 would be placed first. So instead of reverse, let's say I want to do sort. It's going to sort it in a different way now. It is alphabetical, but the number is going and taking the position 0. So this is it. And whoa, we're at the end. We're going smoothly. So split method can be performed on a string and create an array. Split method is not actually a method to be performed on an array, but it is producing an array, so I thought it would be good to mention it here as well. We have a string of Mark, Adam, Justin, Tessa, and now we want to get letters out of this very long string. And maybe this sounds a little bit abstract at the moment, but this is something that we actually use quite a lot because we have many methods devoted to working on the array, like for each and some others that we will discuss in detail a little bit later on. But so often we want to transform a string into an array, so that we can use one of the methods that are available for the array. And split will help us turn a string into an array. So here, for instance, if I will print out the content of letters, you'll see that all letters have been produced here, return 22 characters, and this is also including the white space. You can see the white space has also been included as a character, and they all been divided by a comma as per usual in the array. And we have all separate characters as a separate element in here. And here you can see that it's almost the same, but here this is an empty space here. And here we are specifying, this is a white space here inside, and just have a look. So this method works this way, that here as a parameter, you can indicate how you want to split the elements from the string into an array. So if you indicate here as a parameter white space, the program will look for the white space here, and this is how it's going to divide the string into elements. So instead of like dividing into letters, we want to change just a very long string but of names into an array of names. So instead of like just like using the default split, we can indicate in the parameter as a parameter that we want to subdivide it looking for the white space. And as soon as the program encounters the white space, it's going to stop and produce a new element. It's producing Mark, then it's finding the white space, so it's producing Adam, and then Justin, and then Tessa. So we have now the same names, but stored as an array. And then obviously if we wanted to do something with those elements, we would have to store it as a new variable. So we could refer to it and make some new operations on them. Here we are introducing a comma as a parameter, and you can see that now instead of looking for the white space, the program is looking for that comma here, and that's how it's making the separation. So finding a comma, it introduces new element, but you can see that it's not perfect because it's actually like taking after the comma, it starts producing the new element right away, including this white space here. You can see that it's white space here, white space here, white space in here, and here, and here. And it's because it's just kind of like finding everything. So we could handle it, and I think it was by introducing also the white space here. So it's finding the element of comma and white space. I'm not 100% sure. So I don't work with arrays so much. I'm just gonna remove that second parameter. Save. Oh no, I don't want to save. I just want to enter. Cool. Right. So if we introduce those two as the separation thing that's supposed to be like cut out, and as soon as the program finds the comma and the white space, it's going to produce new elements. So we got rid of the white space this way. So you can see not everything you have to remember. It's just that if you have enough information, then you can work around and just get there by yourself. It's just enough to have the starting point, and it's not exactly necessary that you need to know every single method in so much detail that it works. Like I've been working with some seniors who don't take any shame in going on Google search and finding what exactly the parameters mean. So for instance, if we have slice and splice, if somebody works with slice and splice every day at work, or Kyle Simpson probably knows, and they remember by heart. But some or most people don't bother remembering every single detail. They remember the high level things, what they need to achieve and how it has to be achieved, or how it can be achieved. But why bother with remembering what exactly is the second parameter for? It's enough that you know that the splice method can do this and that, and you can achieve this, and then just quickly go on a search and remember, okay, this second parameter was how many elements you want to remove, rather than at what index you want the program to stop. And I'm not saying that you should be sloppy in your learning, but you do, well, maybe you're aiming for perfection, and that's amazing. But at this point, I think it's better to understand things rather than memorize them by heart and then not be able to use them. When something is like super necessary to remember, and I'm gonna say like with the pop, shift, unshift, and push, those methods is something that you shouldn't be Googling, is something that you should know off top of your head. But those are okay to just know and be familiar with. If we provide the second parameter to our split method, you can see it's gonna print out only the first 3 elements. So this is also pretty useful, and obviously this is returned as an array, so we have a new array to work with. And the last example, we have dates of birth, we have some years here, also provided as a long string. And if we wanted, instead of having dates of birth as a string, we can have it as an array. Just do a split on it and indicate that you want to make a split where the comma is. There you go. So exact same date. Again, we could get rid of this white space here by making the white space here, and we have an array of dates provided as a string, because this was a whole long string, and now we have like a mini short strings, but in the array that we can iterate through and do many other things that we can do on the arrays. And I think that would be all for the topic of methods for the array. I think this is enough to build this solid foundation and move on to the next topic. So I'm waiting for you, and I think the next thing we are going to discuss, I'm just going to have a quick look. After the array, we have loops. So we are going to iterate, and it's also going to feel amazing because first loops are like, it's such a good feeling to finally be able to understand what it means. So I'm looking forward to see you right there.